Where do things sit right now after week 2 of the college football season as it pertains to the college football playoff? Because listen, there's going to be a time here, I believe it's like early November. I actually don't even know when the college football playoff rankings come out. That's how little attention I'm paying to it. But as we sit here right now, we already have a good gauge for the playoff picture. We do. So if you have just now joined the show, welcome. It's the Hard Count, the People's College Football Show. We are on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern, right here, live in living color on this wonderful platform that is the On3 YouTube channel. It is September 11th, 2024, the last one on the face of the planet. So grateful to have y'all joining us. We're going to talk college football, nothing but college football for the better part of the next hour. So go ahead and relax and enjoy this one. As I was saying, man, playoffs. It's kind of become a dirty word to use this early in the year, and I'm not making a playoff prediction. We already did that way back in, I guess it was early August, maybe even late July. But I want us to sit down together and unpack the tiers within the college football playoff right now, because we understand this now. Bubble is a label now that we're having to put on teams that we didn't used to do throughout the college football season. Like being on the bubble is either, hey, they're going to be in or they're not going to be in. They look like a playoff team or they don't look like a playoff team. So who's on the bubble? We'll take a trip out to Bubble Central and unpack that together. But I also think we need to discuss who, as of right now, looks very much so like a college football playoff team. Who are the teams that maybe we would put in the playoff penthouse, if you will? We'll unpack that together. We'll also talk about the teams that, for right now, are maybe on the outside looking in, kind of waiting in line. And then we got to take a trip out to the G5 country, man. It is a party out there in G5, so we'll unpack that and see which team is going to have their chance to maybe make the 12-team field as a 12 seed. We'll unpack that together. Florida State, they got a big one this week. And when we sat back and looked at the schedule, there's a very low percentage chance that you and I both circled. I know we didn't circle it, so maybe you didn't. If you did, more power to you. There's a very low percentage chance that you highlighted or circled the Memphis game as one of intrigue. Well, as Florida State's 0-2 right now, going back to the crib, and they're playing Mike Norvell's former team. How does Florida State bounce back? So we'll give you our pick in that one. Believe it or not, it is right now a 6.5-point spread favoring Florida State. That's it. A touchdown. And Memphis now, don't get it twisted, they are fighting for their playoff lives as well. You don't think a win over an ACC team with the big brand in Florida State, wouldn't boost their playoff resume a little bit? So we'll give you our pick in that one. And also, I want us to have a conversation around the quarterback situations right now at Auburn and at Florida. Because we do this thing, man, whenever there is something that's not working the way that we want it to work, and whenever we get a glimpse or an idea of maybe the other side of the grass that always looks greener, we're always very quick to say, hey, time for a change, time for a pivot. I've been pretty vocal about how I feel about both those quarterback situations separately. As we sit here on this beautiful thing that is Big Picture Wednesday, I want us to unpack both those situations together around Florida and Auburn at their quarterback position. And then a little bit later, we'll unpack a take that's kind of been making its way around the college football social media sphere. Some expansionists have just been running with the idea that just because Texas and Michigan drew a big number, that like validates their take that the 12-team playoff is good for college football. And I'm not here to unpack the whole, is the 12-team good or bad for college football? We've already done that. But I do think we need to kind of speak on behalf of those of us that were in favor of the 4-team playoff staying the same, and why a big number for Texas and Michigan doesn't prove anyone's point around the 12-team playoff. So with that being said, we're glad to have y'all here. If you are new to the show, again, subscribe to the On3 YouTube channel, because this show talks college football from January through December, and then we start over again in January. If you're more of a podcast person, the Hard Count, Apple, Spotify, go get them there. I was telling the guys on Video Row yesterday, which Video Row, for those of y'all that are just now tuning in, you can see behind me now, there's like a number of desks, sort of a newsroom looking deal. Everyone on the video team sits at those desks. So I have started calling that Video Row. Told the guys on Video Row, hey, it's about time for you to start, kind of piecing together your Spotify Wrapped. Like if you don't want to be exposed when it comes time to put those out on the socials, which everyone does every December, now is the time. And if you want to boost your Spotify Wrapped or whatever you listen on, the Hard Count is on podcasts, and we'd love to have y'all there. So let's get right to it, man. Playoff tiers. Moving into week 3 of the college football season. Full transparency, I'm not married to that name. Tried to think of something more clever. Couldn't find one. Maybe we'll circle back next week. It'll have a different label on the graphic. If you have a better idea, for a name for this segment than just playoff tiers, by all means, we'd love to hear it. So hit me up on the socials at JD Pickell on Twitter and on Instagram. But let's start with the teams that we feel good about. And we're going to call these teams our teams in the playoff penthouse as of right now. Like for us moving into week 3, these are the teams that we would be wildly surprised if they're not in the college football playoff come the end of the season. Now, this is not a ranking. I'm listing these teams not necessarily in order as to where we see them in the college football playoff picture. We do that on Sundays. So, again, another reason to be subscribed. But let's start with who I believe is the best team in America right now, and that's Georgia. In Georgia, they did what they did to Clemson in week 1. They did what you would expect them to do to Tennessee Tech the following week. I'm riding with them until there is a reason not to. You have, I believe, the best or one of the best quarterbacks in the sport. You have the best head coach in the sport. I think you have the best roster in the sport. And so all those things come together for me to be like, all right, it's Georgia till it's not for me right now. Now, they will play Alabama at Bama end of September. We're going to learn a lot about them then. Curious to see if they're able to be businesslike against Kentucky this week at Kentucky. Kentucky now is at times been an issue for different Georgia teams over the course of the last couple of years. Wasn't the case last year in Athens, but we'll see what happens there. Here's what I will say about Georgia. Right now, I think they're keeping it very vanilla, very basic, kind of taking in the data of their opponent and then reacting from there. We're going to get to October and November, and we're going to get into some more not meaningful football, but it's going to start to become kind of playoff hunt time towards the end of the year. We're going to see Georgia start to play, I think, their best football then. I think we're going to see Georgia start to dictate terms to the opposition. So Georgia, for me, again, this is not in order, but I think they're the best team in college football, and I'm putting them in the playoff penthouse until something wildly drastic happens or we have reason to not put them in the playoff penthouse. Ohio State, if you were to push back and say, JD, I think Ohio State's the best team in America, I wouldn't have a lot to push back against you with. Like, honestly, for them, if you're Ohio State, like full speed ahead, you do not apologize for handling business the way you've handled business and who you've played against to this point in the year. Something to maybe take note of if you're an Ohio State fan. You already knew this going into the year, but having that 1-2 punch in the backfield now of Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, it always looked nice on paper, but to see it against Western Michigan and to see those dudes combine for 4 touchdowns, I'm just saying, college football, as we expand the playoff, it's becoming more and more of a depth game. To have 2 RB1s in your backfield, to go with a quarterback in Will Howard who can also add some versatility into the run game, with an OC and Chip Kelly who's like, hey, run the darn ball, they're going to be in good shape. So Ohio State, love where they're at. They're absolutely in the playoff penthouse. Now, Texas, they were in the playoff penthouse last week, and they are just kicking their feet up on the ottoman this week with what they did to Michigan. They went to Ann Arbor, and they left 0 doubt. Like, it was remember the Titans style. Run it up. Leave no doubt. That was what they did. And I think we always knew, and I said this yesterday, we always knew, like, Texas, they could play the scoreboard game with you. They could trade scores. If it was first to 40 or 50, like, all right, let's roll. We feel good about our quarterback. But coming out of that game where you bullied the bully in college football last year, yeah, they lost some pieces, but to bully them the way they bullied them and to hold them to 80-ish yards rushing, that says a lot about where Texas is right now. Because that was one of the things that I wanted to see going into that game was, okay, we feel good about Texas as a roster, but, like, what's the push like when we watch that broadcast? Is it Michigan kind of pushing those white jerseys back of Texas? Y'all, it was stalemate after stalemate after stalemate. And then even, a little bit later in the game, it felt like Texas was getting the better push against Michigan. So all that's to say here is Michigan, say what you want about what they lost. They still have a ton of NFL draft picks, I believe, on that defense, at least 3 that are going to go in the first 3 rounds. And I'll say this too, 2 of those are on the defensive line. So Texas, they're for real. They're definitely a college football playoff caliber team. I'll take it a step further. They're a national title caliber team after that game against Michigan. Now for Ole Miss, kind of the same thing was said about Ohio State. You don't apologize for handling business the way that you're supposed to handle business. Through 2 games of the season, Ole Miss has a score against their opponents of 128-3. Yeah, that's pretty good. Bonita Fish are, in fact, big. And people are saying, well, look at their competition. I'm not sure about Ole Miss just yet. Here's what I would also say. Penn State didn't handle business the way you want them to handle business against Bowling Green. Now, Bowling Green might be better than, a Furman, but still, it could have been worse. Notre Dame, They were in the playoff penthouse last week. They dropped out of there after losing to NIU, inferior competition. So all I'm going to say here is for Ole Miss, so far, so good. They're in the playoff penthouse until we have reason to kick them out. Miami, I can't figure out who they're going to lose to. Like, I understand that the game Friday night against Virginia Tech maybe makes you a little bit nervous, but like that Florida State game you feel a lot better about. Florida, I thought, was the toughest test for them game one in the swamp, and it felt like they were just clocking in, clocking out of an 8-5. It was so casual. Cam Ward playing quarterback for them is the differentiating factor. That roster, we've said it a lot now. This is the roster you signed up for when you hired Mario Cristobal to be your head coach in Coral Gables. Miami's a machine. They're in the playoff penthouse, and I feel pretty confident saying they're going to win the ACC. As we sit here right now heading into week 3, famous last words. Now, I still have Alabama in the playoff penthouse. And some of y'all are going to push back and say, well, JD, like the USF game, man, like you can't look that way for 3 quarters and then turn it on in the 4th quarter. It's like, one, the offensive line was not what they're going to be, fingers crossed, the rest of the season, based on what they didn't have available to them. Caden Proctor did not play in that game. Also, remember this last year, Jalen Moto didn't play in this game a season ago, and they struggled with USF as well. The thing that I was impressed by from Alabama, there was no panic. There was no hyperventilation. I said it during our Sunday reaction video series. Alabama in that 4th quarter handled being in that situation with USF at home like adults. There was, okay, well, what works? What are we comfortable with? Let's go to that. Let's turn it on. And I was talking, to Andy Staples before we got on the air here. I'm not so sure that Alabama doesn't have a lot more under the hood in that Kalen DeBoer offense that they're maybe going to unleash a little bit more here as we get further and further into the season, starting with Georgia coming to town a little bit later in September. Curious to see how they handle business and bounce back from this when they go play Wisconsin in Camp Randall. Because we've seen this from Saban teams too. When Saban was there, you would have Alabama have a slow game, a sluggish game, and then they would go out and play their best football the following weeks. Is that the same deal with Kalen DeBoer? We'll find out. But I feel good about Bama right now. Not worried about the USF game. Last team I'll put in here in the playoff penthouse, I got Utah. And the Cam Rising hand thing, the injury makes you a little bit nervous for a split second. Sounds like he's going to be more than fine. As long as he's playing quarterback for them, as long as they have the defensive experience they have, as long as Kyle Whittingham's the head coach, all Cam Rising does as the starting quarterback at Utah is win conference title games. So they're still my pick in the Big 12. I think only one team gets in from the Big 12. But even with that being said, those are the teams I have right now in the playoff penthouse. Now let's take a trip out to Bubble Central. And if we're talking about the college football playoff as like an apartment building, and those are the teams in the penthouse, these are the teams I would say are in the lobby. And y'all, Tennessee, I had to fight my better judgment to not put them in the playoff penthouse. I think we need to see a little bit more from them, but I mean, they just absolutely obliterated NC State. And the question going in was, well, okay, Nico, now we've seen him in the bowl game, and we saw him, against Chattanooga, and he looked real good, but like, what is Nico really? I get it. It wasn't an away game, but it wasn't a home game either. And I have to think that NC State, with that being in Charlotte, had their fair share of supporters. Obviously, Nico Iamaleava is a big exclamation mark on what you expect Tennessee to be this year. And with him playing the way that he did, and I know he had the 2 picks, I'm not really too worried about that right now. I love the mobility. I love the quarterback design run game. I said it feels like they now have the volume cranked up on what the Josh Heupel offense can be out there in Knoxville. It's the defense. Like, if you have reason to be excited about Tennessee, what they've been so far in that front 7 led by James Pierce, y'all, they had 13 tackles for a loss against NC State. Even if Nico Iamaleava has a couple other hiccups left in his first year as the guy at Tennessee, even if he doesn't play an absolutely flawless season, you've got a defense now that you can lean on a little bit more. And I'm telling you this right now, the offense at times will look very 2022-ish. Like when Nico is on, he's on. I said it before, I think he's the most physically gifted quarterback you've ever had in Knoxville. Not the best. Peyton Manning's the best, but physical tools, physical giftings, that's Nico Iamaleava. They are going to hum offensively a lot this year. But if they're ever not, you got a defense you can lean on a little bit. Imagine if you could say that about your 2022 squad with Hendon Hooker. Imagine you put a squad like that in a 12-team playoff. I like Tennessee a lot. I had them as a playoff team before the year started. I still have them as a playoff team. I'm not putting them in the Penthouse just yet, but if you were to put them on the bubble, they're at the front of the line in that lobby to take the elevator up to the Penthouse. September 21st, they go to Norman, Oklahoma. That's the game I want to see before we move them up. Now, Oregon, they were in the playoff Penthouse last week. Played Idaho real close, and I was like, man, I'm not worried about it. Don't sell your Oregon stock. I was saying Oregon's fine. Was saying I felt pretty good about Oregon to go out and work Boise State at home, and they did not look like that dominant team we expected them to look like coming off of a game where they looked a little bit lackluster against an FCS Idaho. I'm not selling my stock, but I'm also not quite as confident as I was a couple of weeks ago. That's why they're on the bubble in my mind. The thing with Oregon for me is I think they have issues. I don't think they have problems. Like problems, you need a concrete solution. Problems, you need to get another player. You need to fix a coaching thing. You need there's actual solutions that need to be acquired. Issues, I think you can work through. Issues to me is you have everything you need. You just got to find a way to put it together. They haven't done that just yet. I think it is far more likely that Oregon is just trying to gel right now through 2 weeks of the season with a transfer quarterback, a transfer wide receiver, some transfer pieces on defense. I think that's more likely than them just not being who we thought they would be going into the year. The roster is still one of the best in college football. I put the roster up there with Ohio State and Georgia and Texas, but can they gel and put it together? That's the big question. So far, hasn't looked great. A little bit more nervous, not selling stock, but understand now, the longer you hold that stock, that price is not trending upward. So Oregon for us on the bubble this week, chilling in the lobby of the college football playoff apartment, but nonetheless, they have some margin for error now with their bigger roster tests a little bit later in the year. Now, if they play the way they've played now these first 2 weeks, they will get beat before October. I'll just say that. However, if they continue to trend the right way, they don't play Ohio State till October. They don't play Michigan till November. So we'll see. We'll see about Oregon, but concerned a little bit. For Penn State, we've seen some good, we've seen some bad. To me, they're on the bubble this week. I just need to see more consistency. Because I picked West Virginia when they went to Morgantown. Got in here on Tuesday, ate crow. I was like, hey, I was wrong. That offense is explosive. They look good. And then Bowling Green goes out and gives them a game till the fourth quarter. Wait, who are you? I'm not 100% sure what we're getting just yet from Penn State. I like them a lot. I just want to see more consistency. I like Drew Aller. I like the way that offense is progressing. I want to see more consistency from the team overall. Because the offense looked good week one. The offense, quite frankly, looked pretty good week two. But the defense, to look that way against Bowling Green, hey, let's pick it up a little bit here. So for me, they're on the bubble this week. Now, USC was another team that right now is in Bubble Central, just hanging out. They're a team that I was very, very close to moving up into the playoff Penthouse. Defense shut out Utah State. And you say, JD, it's Utah State. Yeah, it was also San Jose State a year ago in week 0, where I was like, hey, I'm not sure just yet about the defense, give them some time. We were having to talk about the USC defense against inferior competition the last couple of years. Don't discredit them for shutting out Utah State. A shutout versus anybody for USC right now is good news. They held LSU to 20 points. I think LSU is still a pretty stacked offense, just so we're all on the same page there. I'm excited about USC. And y'all, I cannot wait. September 21st now is going to be a great weekend. September 21st, they go to Ann Arbor. We're going to find out about USC. We'll find out about the offense, sure, and it's going to be a better test for them, I think, than they've had to this point in the season. But, we're going to find out a lot about the defense. Because if they can hold up against that smash-mouth approach, and I understand they got issues at quarterback and all that, does Michigan, we'll see. But, they're going to run the football. If USC can hold serve against that Michigan line of scrimmage, all right, look out for USC now. Look out for USC. Now, I have Oklahoma State also on the bubble right now. And I'm not knocking Oklahoma State. This is essentially just my unofficial, official prediction for them to be the second best team in the Big 12 right now. Found a way to get it done at home against Arkansas. You would have liked to see a little bit more, of a quick start from them at home, from that veteran operation. We'll keep an eye on Oklahoma State. They're going to have a chance now to settle on the field, but I'm not 100% sold on them just yet. Again, nothing bad to say about them. Found a way to get it done at home against a squirrely Arkansas operation, but even with that being said, to me, I don't think you'll see more than one Big 12 team in the college football playoff. That'll be the champion. To me, they're still the second best team as of right now. Now, I have Missouri hanging out in Bubble Central, and I think the logic to push back against this is extremely fair. We say, JD, you put Ole Miss in the college football playoff Penthouse. Why don't you put Missouri? They're both handling business against inferior competition. I'll be honest, there's some preseason bias here for me with Mr. Drinkwitz and Mr. Brady Let Him Cook. I love those guys. They're some of my favorite individuals in college football. We talked to Luther Burden, and he's like, I want to win the Heisman. And I love so much that he had the gumption to say that during SEC Media Days. However, they lost a lot from last year's squad. They lost 40% production on defense. They lost their DC. I just want to see, they lost Cody Schrader. I just want to see them play better competition before I put them in the Penthouse, all right? Now, the schedule plays in their favor. On paper, it did, at least in the preseason. But, y'all, I'll just say this. The end of September for them looks a lot more difficult than we thought it would look when we glanced over this whole deal back in the summer. They play Boston College this week. Y'all, Boston College is ranked. That's a ranked matchup. Gotta love college football. And then they also play Vanderbilt. And Vanderbilt now, with the way they're looking, that team in Nashville is not going to be an easy out. I'll just say that. They got them in back-to-back weeks. They get them both at home, but I'm just saying, keep an eye on Missouri. We're going to find out a lot more about them in the coming weeks, and obviously when they go to Texas A&M, we'll have a better gauge for them. So those are the teams for me right now that are on the bubble when it comes to the college football playoff picture, our playoff tiers, if you will. Okay, now I want to get to the teams that are waitlisted for us right now. Before we do, though, want to make sure y'all know, want to make sure everybody knows that watches this show, the Hard Count is brought to you by Prize Picks. And I'll just say, we've had a blast playing Prize Picks, y'all. Like, Prize Picks has allowed us to squeeze even more juice out of our college football Saturdays, which I didn't know was possible. It's daily fantasy, super easy to play, comprehensive, easy to withdraw what you win. The way that it works, and we play exclusively college football on this show, so fade or follow there if you would like. The way that it works is we pick 2 or more player projections, so their stats. So, for example, Jordan McLeod, Texas State quarterback. He plays on Thursday night against Arizona State. His number, his projection is 247.5 passing yards. We're going to go ahead and take the more there. Feel pretty good about that. He's thrown for more than that number 4 out of his last 5 contests, so we'll roll with that there. You go ahead and pair that with one other player projection. Right now, Prize Picks is giving away a free square. Caleb Williams, half a passing yard. You take the more and you keep it moving. So you put those two together, use code HARDCOUNT at prizepicks.com. When you redeem that code, now this is the best part, just for playing a $5 lineup, gets you $50 more in promo funds to use. So code HARDCOUNT, $5 in lineups, gets you $50 in promo funds. So lock in with us. Again, we're taking Jordan McLeod, the more on 247.5 pass yards against Arizona State, and we'll take Caleb Williams, more than a half a passing yard this upcoming week for him and the Bears. So again, hard count, $5 in lineups, $50 in promo funds when you use that code at prizepicks.com. So we'll talk more about Texas State here in a second when we check in on our party going out there on G5 Street. But before we get to that, let's talk about the teams right now that I would say are waitlisted. Now, a lot of smart people get waitlisted from colleges they would like to go to. Right? We all know that valedictorian that had a great ACT score and they had great extracurriculars, but for whatever reason now they got waitlisted at X, Y, and Z school. Doesn't mean you can't still get in, but it does mean that there's some soul searching to do, some introspection to be had. And to me, LSU is at the top of this waiting in line list. Big opportunity this week. Like, this is kind of a gift, if we're being honest, around LSU with the fact they get another national game, a game with a lot of national implications on it. And I'm not saying that South Carolina is going to be a college football playoff team, but they are undefeated. College game day is there, and you probably weren't going to get this kind of exposure from the college football public or to the college football public for a little bit later in your year. Like, you were going to have to live with the idea that, hey, the last time we got to see LSU was against USC. Because they play UCLA here soon, and that's going to be, it'll be fun to watch. Like, college football sickos will be dialed in, but, it's not going to have the same implications on the narrative around LSU. College football, whether we like it or not, still a narrative sport. As long as there is a playoff selection committee, it is a narrative sport. So they have a chance, I think, to kind of improve that narrative a little bit. The reason why I have them on the waiting list or waiting in line in this college football playoff tiers segment I'm concerned they already have that loss to USC. 9-3 does not get you in the playoff. I don't think that's what it's going to take this year. I think maybe in future years some chips fall your way. I don't see 9-3 being good enough. And so if you're going to get in the college football playoff, that means you have to lose no more than one other game against South Carolina, Ole Miss, at A&M, Alabama, Oklahoma. Like, is there more than one loss in that stretch? There can't be, and that's a tall task. So right now, waiting in line, some soul searching to do. I'm excited to see how they put it together, though. I love Garrett Nussmeier. I think he's built for it. If this team responds how previous Brian Kelly's teams respond, we say a lot about the opener and what they don't bring in that first game, and then usually they bounce back and they're a really good football team. So LSU waiting in line right now, but definitely still have their playoff hopes alive. Now Clemson, they're going to have a chance. They're off this week, and then they play NC State. I think we could move Clemson into that bubble central tier if they look how Tennessee looked against NC State. Because I think we have a pretty good gauge for what they are right now, NC State that is. I don't think they're necessarily the potent offense that you would have hoped you're getting out there in Raleigh. The defense had some issues against Tennessee. If Clemson's going to take that next step, they need to dominate NC State. All right, so sounds like I'm putting too much stock into the NC State game. Optically, just for the segment of the tiers, like I need to see something from Clemson that following week. Was very encouraging to see them thwack App State. I thought App State would cover. I thought App State would give them a game. That did not happen. Neither of those happened. And one of y'all sent me a Venmo request for that. Not accepting that, but I do appreciate the passion behind that gesture. Kansas State. No knock on Kansas State, but to me, they're the third best team right now in the Big 12. They didn't look awesome against Tulane. I cannot wait, though, for this Friday night game against Arizona. That's going to be a lot of fun. Going to learn a lot about Kansas State. Probably learn a lot about Arizona. The winner of that game now will probably be in this tier the following week, if not on the bubble, depending on what happens across the Big 12 this week. Notre Dame, they're not out. They're still on the waiting list. They're not out, but, I mean, they have to make a statement the rest of the way. The loss to Northern Illinois, I mean, just if you're a Fighting Irish fan, just breaks your heart because you cleared that hurdle week one at Texas A&M in College Station. You're like, okay, hey, this could be a team that goes right now. And then you have the game you have against NIU, and Riley Leonard throws 2 picks, and the defense allows 190 yards on the ground. You're like, what just happened? How did we have this kind of a game? Didn't execute. For whatever reason, we're not able to lock in the way they need to lock in. If you're a Notre Dame fan now, you pick up the pieces, you look at the rest of your schedule, you are rooting hard for everyone else that you still have left to play. You are rooting for fat cows to be able to take down. So you're rooting for Georgia Tech, you're rooting for USC, you're rooting for Florida State. Like, you want those wins to be as highly ranked as possible for you to get so you can boost the resume. And I will say this too. I think that, college football playoff, as long as there's a committee, there's still some recency bias baked in there. As much as we try to say there's not, what I saw from you most recently is probably going to factor in. So you're rooting hard for those teams on your schedule, but we'll see what happens the rest of the way. Notre Dame not out, but they got to make a statement. Maybe more importantly, they got to figure it out on offense. I love Riley Leonard. I need to see consistency. Need to see more consistency down the field. So we'll see what happens there. Michigan, last team that I would put on the waiting list. Still a good team. Still a good roster. I mentioned all the draft picks. They got a lot of those, I think, especially on defense. They got to figure it out when it comes to their identity on offense. Because run, throw to Colston Loveland is not an identity. That is a formula. And then a formula is pretty easy to stop. Like, I don't think it's time to switch quarterbacks just yet, but I do think it's time to at least consider the possibility that Alex Orji needs more snaps. Because at least when he's in the game, I know that there's going to be a direction of the offense. Maybe more importantly, regardless of who's playing quarterback, let's get some creativity. Let's get some window dressing. Let's get some pre-snap movement. Like, I didn't see any of that against Texas, and that was disappointing. I don't think that they right now have the ability to just go north and south the way that they did last year. Like, last year they had, 5+ NFL offensive linemen. Not saying they can't have that going forward, but I haven't seen it just yet. So Michigan, the path is still in front of them. They got to beat USC. They got to beat Oregon. They got to beat Ohio State. And if they turn it on and they end up beating some of those teams, if they go 10-2, I think they're a playoff team. But still, they got their work cut out for them. Down, not out. But for right now, we'll put them ahead on the waiting list when it comes to the college football playoff. Now, if you hear some music turned up, if you're trying to sleep at night and you're like, what is that? Are those the neighbors? Is that somebody down the street throwing a party? No, it's the G5. Okay, they're having a good time. Let's check in real quick on them. Boise State, even though they lost, I thought they made a great case for themselves. If they win the Mountain West and they have a loss to a top 10 Oregon team, it's like, okay, hey, keep an eye on Boise State right now. Now, you would hope that that 3-point loss ages well, that Oregon's able to kind of pick it up here and look good the rest of the way to make you look good. But Boise State now, Ashton Genty, he keeps doing his thing. We're going to have to put him in that Heisman conversation a little bit more firmly. All right? I love Ashton Genty. I love what the Boise State Broncos are doing. Go ahead and keep an eye on them with that G5 party. Now, Memphis, we're going to talk about a little bit later in the show. They got a chance to make a statement this week. They go to Tallahassee, and what do they find for them but an 0-2 Florida State team? Memphis is 2-0. They haven't played anybody, just to be fair, but like if they beat Florida State, think about the resume boost for them when it comes time for the college football playoff. Think about what that would mean for them if they're able to be an American Athletic Conference champ, especially if they're undefeated. Like that in itself is another conversation, but Memphis, big opportunity this week. Right now, I believe they have the third best odds of the G5 to make the college football playoff, so keep an eye on the Tigers. Very big one this week in Tallahassee. UNLV got a Power 4 win under their belt against Houston so far. Like, keep an eye on them. I think they're worth monitoring in that G5 party. Texas State, huge opportunity as well. A lot of opportunities this week for G5 teams. Arizona State on a Thursday. Weird things happen in weekday college football games. They're going to score points as Texas State. Again, we like Jordan McLeod. 247.5 pass yards. We'll take the more there. We'll pair it with the Caleb Williams free square on Prize Picks. Code HARDCOUNT. $5 in lineups. $50 in promos. We're off to the races. We love that. And Liberty, man. We're just going to keep talking about Liberty for a number of reasons. One, preseason, they had the best odds to go undefeated. Not of the G5. Of anyone in college football. They got to have a trip out there to Boone, North Carolina and play App State, so we'll see what happens there. You got a quarterback, you got a chance. And Liberty, they got themselves a quarterback. So, yes, it is, in fact, to quote Walk a Flock of Flame, it is, in fact, a party. It is a party, it is a party, it is a party out there in G5 country. So those are our playoff tiers. So let's take a quick look at this graphic here and take you through the tiers real quick. Living in the playoff penthouse. We got Georgia. We got Ohio State. We got Texas, Ole Miss, Miami. Not worried about Alabama just yet. We like Utah as well as of right now heading into week 3. Chilling out in the lobby, Bubble Central. You got Tennessee. You got Oregon. Oregon now down from the penthouse, down to the lobby. Got to find a way to surge here if you're Oregon. Penn State, some good, some bad. Not sure about the Nittany Lions just yet. USC, tempted to move them up as I was with Tennessee, but we'll keep them in the bubble right now until they play Michigan. Oklahoma State, second best team in the Big 12. That's where I have them. Missouri, I want to see more competition from them before I move them up. Right now, waiting in line, or waitlisted, if you will. LSU, Clemson, Kansas State, Notre Dame, and Michigan. And then hanging out in the G5, we got Boise State, Memphis, UNLV, Texas State, and Liberty, all vying for what I would anticipate being the 12 seed in that college football playoff. We have our own thoughts on the college football playoff and the 12 teams. We extrapolated a lot. I mean, we pontificated on those thoughts a lot this offseason. I'm not here to do that, but it's going to be a fun November. I'll just say that. It's going to be a very, very fun November. Now, some teams that are not having quite as much fun right now when you talk about their quarterback situations is Auburn and Florida. And I've separately addressed both those, but I want us to address them together right now because I think there's a lot of similarities too. Two high expectation kind of fan bases, two major brands in the sport, two fan bases also that, speaking of expectations, like they want some ROI. Like Billy Napier in his third year, this is a year where Florida fans are like, okay, show me this is going somewhere. Show me that there's hope. Show me there's direction here because that Miami game, that wasn't cutting it. And then Graham Mertz goes down with a concussion. DJ Lagway steps in, does numbers like Goodwill Hunting against Samford, and you're like, whoa, hey, okay, that looked different. That looked very different. Should he be our starting quarterback? In fact, you have a very large portion of the fan base saying he should be our starting quarterback. Now, for Auburn, they're like, hey, Peyton Thorne, man, you threw 4 picks against Cal. We're double-digit point favorites. Losing at home is unacceptable. Like, what are we doing here? And we've seen this movie now for the better part of a year. So both fan bases, I believe, from what I've heard now, Florida's calling for DJ Lagway, Auburn's calling for Hank Brown. And I want to be very clear. This take around both of those schools, neither of them, or the take in general, is not regarding either backup quarterback. I think both of the future at their respective schools, quite frankly. DJ Lagway, the best quarterback in America from the most recent recruiting class. Like, he's going to be special in Gainesville. Hank Brown, the fact that he won that quarterback 2 job should tell you a lot about what he has under the hood. All right, the guy's a ball player. Again, I think when it's his time to spin it at Auburn, he's going to have a lot of success. I love both those quarterbacks. However, given the current circumstances for Auburn and Florida, I don't think it's the correct move right now, knowing what we know, to make a pivot. So let's start with addressing Florida. Here's my problem with saying that DJ Lagway should be the starter at Florida. The take I continue to hear is, well, hey, it gives Billy Napier the best chance to keep his job, gives him the best shot to stay the head coach at Florida. And to me, that is just the epitome of a loser mentality. You want to start a kid because you think it's going to help the head coach keep his job? When did it not become about winning? Now, if you think with all your heart of hearts, DJ Lagway gives Florida the best chance to win football games, great. We can have a discussion about that. I'm all for it. I see the logic. I think the mobility is there. The arm talent is obviously there. He lit up Samford. You love the progress. That's another discussion. But if your take is solely, hey, it's his only chance to keep his job, loser mentality, total loser mentality. For me, this year has always been for Florida about getting to 6 or 7 wins. If it's 6, it's got to look like the right 6. If it's 7, I think his job is safe. So you're telling me that you would rather go with the true freshman quarterback as opposed to the 6-year starting quarterback, or the 6-year quarterback who's started already a year for you in the system? Say, well, hey, JD, you saw what he did against Samford, right? Went up for over 400 yards, 100%. It was super impressive. Again, the concern for me in even doing this segment is it sounds like I'm taking something away from a DJ Lagway. That's not the point at all. The point is, Graham Mertz also went for over 400 yards against South Carolina. Graham Mertz also had a really good year last year, throwing for only 3 interceptions, 20 touchdowns, over 3,000 yards. Make no mistake, I think Graham Mertz, if he stays healthy, you take down a top 10 Missouri team on the road. I think if you have a healthy Graham Mertz, this is really a woulda, shoulda, coulda, but I think you have at least a better chance to beat Florida State with where they were at that point in the year. Let's not pretend that Graham Mertz hasn't shown you some really good things so far. Now, does DJ Lagway have to have a role? Absolutely. If Graham Mertz really struggles and he proves that he is not the guy that gives you the best chance to win football games, okay, let's make a pivot there. That's another conversation. But knowing what we know now, I think it'd be irresponsible to not go with the known commodity. Any take that says, well, hey, it gives him a chance to keep his job, loser mentality. Loser mentality, and I think it should be all about winning this year. I think having Graham Mertz back for another year proves it should be about winning this year. I don't want to hear about, well, eventually he's going to be the guy. Yes, of course he's going to be the guy. That's a huge reason why he's not going anywhere, is DJ Lagway this year. I know there's this talk around, well, if Billy Napier gets fired, what happens with the transfer portal? You go win football games, and then we'll have that discussion. If Billy Napier's still the head coach, then that point doesn't even have to be talked about. All right? So I think the Graham Mertz discussion, anything that doesn't have to do with winning, to me, is just we're not aligning here. Again, if DJ Lagway, if your opinion is he gives you the best chance to win football games, great. Let's talk about that. And I think there's some merit to that as well. So that's another conversation. Now, for Auburn, the thing that I keep hearing is JD, we know who Peyton Thorne is. We've seen it for 13 games. Because I went to bat for Peyton Thorne keeping his job on, I guess it was Monday, and I said, hey, listen, it was one bad game. You need to have a little bit more of assessment of why they made him the starting quarterback to begin with. You didn't go to the portal. He's your guy. There's a reason why he's your guy. And the pushback I got was, JD, this isn't one game. This is the 13th game we've seen. And what I would say is, okay, it's the 13th game you've seen of Peyton Thorne. Maybe when you go to his game log on ESPN, maybe. It's 13th game he's been an Auburn Tiger. That's true. Is it the 13th game you've seen Peyton Thorne with actual weapons, with a not dysfunctional offensive scheme, with him actually having spring football? No, right? This is the second game you've seen of that. Okay? So for Peyton Thorne, for me, the thing is always let's not be knee-jerky based on one bad game. Now, does he have to be your guy the rest of the way till death do us part? Not saying that. Not saying that at all. I said it on Monday. I'll say it again. my approach to the Peyton Thorne situation would be, hey, let's go ahead and give him the New Mexico game. If we have problems with New Mexico, hey, this discussion changes pretty drastically, okay? So we'll leave that there. Give him New Mexico. Give him the first half of Arkansas. And if everything is good, first half of Arkansas, Auburn scoring points, offense looks good, okay, let's roll. Because I totally agree. The offense is way too talented, too many skill players to not have a guy at quarterback that can distribute the football. But, again, I think one game against Cal, with the situation that he's in right now, I'm not even really counting last year, to be real. I think you account for it, but I don't think you make it like the narrative around Peyton Thorne is, well, last year plus this year. You have to take it into account, but I don't think it's the end-all, be-all when you factor in. Like, to say that you've had 14 games now, 13 games of Peyton Thorne, I don't think that's true. I think you have 2 based on this year. So give it a little longer to bake. Give it a little longer bake to the folks in Gainesville as well. I'm not saying this is the end-all, be-all. If there is a reason to pivot that is punching you in the face, then do that, okay? But right now, I think it is irresponsible to make that change in week 3 of the college football season. That's my take. That's my take on the whole matter. Now, speaking of takes, there was a take that was just running rampant yesterday in the college football social media sphere because there was a graphic put out. I want to say it was maybe Fox College Football or maybe it was Fox Sports. I don't know. And I interned with Fox when I was in college. Love Fox Sports. Love Fox College Football. I love Fox Big Noon. I love Big Noon Conversations. Like, I have zero things to say that are bad about Fox overall, okay? So we'll leave that there. But the take was, well, hey, or I'll rephrase that. There was the graphic going out, and the graphic said right around 9.5 million people watch Texas and Michigan. Most viewed broadcast of a college football game this season. Huge number, like massive. You love that for Fox. I love that for college football. But people took that and ran with it and said, man, I thought they told me the regular season of college football wouldn't matter anymore with the 12-team playoff. Man, I guess all those people that thought the college football playoff should stay at 4 teams is just eating crow right now. One, we eat crow on Tuesdays. We're not eating crow right now. Second, to me, this doesn't prove anything. Like, I don't think that, like, if you think that's what people supporting the 4-team playoff were calling for, was that people weren't still going to watch college football, you missed the point entirely. The point was never people won't watch Texas and Michigan. Anybody who loves the sport will watch Texas and Michigan, especially week 2 when both are undefeated. Of course we're watching Texas and Michigan. However, the opinion was the magic around the regular season, when you go to 12 teams in the college football playoff, gets diluted a little bit. Okay, now in week 2, this is a massive data point for both these teams trying to make the college football playoff. This had a college football playoff kind of vibe around it, without question. But to say that this was like somehow the flag you're going to plant as to the regular season mattering as much as it ever has before, I don't buy that. Put it this way. You play this game, let's call it, late October. Let's say that Texas and Michigan are, both with 1 loss, still probably draws the same number. Okay? Like Texas and Michigan, those brands will always draw the intrigue. However, if you were to tell me that Texas and Michigan are playing, or rephrase that, Ohio State and Michigan are playing the last game of the season, and Ohio State has got, 2 losses, and Michigan has got 2 losses, okay? Like, we're moving forward there, and people are still tuning into that, but you understand now, like, that is a playoff game then. That is one that we're all tuned in for. For Ohio State and Michigan, of course, but at that point, it's a playoff game, all right? What I'm trying to say here is the magic around the regular season. That is why people have gone to bat for the 4-team playoff. Because when you go with 12 teams, you can lose multiple games. Okay? Not that you're not watching the sport, but it does impact the way that you view the sport when it comes to the postseason. So, with that being said, love that for Fox. Thought it was a great game. If you really thought nobody was going to watch Texas and Michigan and you thought the playoff would impact that, that's not the point. It was never about the viewership numbers. It was always about what we care about when it comes to the regular season. So we'll leave that there. Now, speaking of the regular season, we got a big one here in week 3. You got Florida State hosting Memphis, noon Eastern, ESPN. If I told you, hey, there's going to be one team that has not won a game yet and one team that's undefeated heading into this game before the year even started, and I said, tell me which team's going to be undefeated. You say, wow, Memphis? Hasn't won a game yet. That's kind of surprising considering they've played Troy and North Alabama leading into this game, but hey, I guess that's the way it goes. Florida State hasn't won a game. That's why they're only favored by 6.5 points at home. So this is a major gut check kind of time for Florida State. Massive opportunity for Memphis. We'll talk about it right now. Before we get to that, though, make sure you're subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. Talking college football, nothing but college football every single day of the year. So we appreciate y'all being locked in. So Florida State, man, the question I have for them, how much pride is there internally? Because at this point now, you've lost 2 games. College football playoff feels a little bit like a pipe dream. It was an expectation to start the year, and now it's like, golly, man, like how many wins can they get out of this season? Are they a team that can make a bowl game? This is Mike Norvell's former team, so you would hope that maybe there's a little bit of extra juice in that locker room as well for those reasons. But I'm curious, man, are they able to pick up the pieces after the bye week, kind of course correct a little bit, and just have overall like a better approach here? The thing that frustrated me so much watching Florida State against Boston College was the body language. You got palms up. You got guys shrugging. You got guys jogging after an interception. You got guys walking off the field after getting scored on. Like, it's not having pride in the uniform. It's not having pride in your football team, pride in yourself and how you play the game. Like, I want to see some more pride from Florida State because the roster, quite frankly, they should win this game. Okay? They should win this game, but also should have won the last 2 games. So we'll leave that there. Like I said, if you're Memphis, this is your chance to, just bolster your college football playoff resume when it comes time for Selection Sunday. Now, you got to win the conference, obviously. But, so far so good if you're Memphis. A chance to go get a win on the road with this game looking a lot more winnable than it did before you started the season. This is a confident group now in Memphis. If you have no idea what Memphis football is all about, if you're a Florida State fan watching this, let me break it down for you real quick. Haven't played anybody just yet. Like I mentioned, North Alabama and Troy, not the gauntlet necessarily that you would expect from a team that's going to make the college football playoff, but they're going to make it very difficult on you defensively. A lot of window dressing with pre-snap movements, a lot of options for the quarterback. They're going to run the football now. To this point in the year, Memphis is averaging 200 yards a game on the ground. Say what you want about the competition. To average 200 yards rushing a game, that's special. Okay, Mario Anderson, their lead back, 6 yards a carry. So they're going to make you play a fundamentally sound assignment kind of football. All the boring things that Pop Warner coaches talk about with have gap integrity, trust your keys, all those things like that is going to be on display in this game for Florida State defensively. Florida State, last 2 games they've played, big reason why they've lost it because they haven't played great gap integrity. They haven't played fundamentally sound football on the defensive side, especially against the run, especially with window dressing, all out of sorts, all out of position. If that happens again, they will get beat. Okay, they will get beat. Make no mistake about it. That spread is accurate. Florida State will lose if they don't play well against the run in this game. Okay? Now, as much as we talk about Memphis, this game is about Florida State. It is. It is. Like Florida State, they have a better roster. They, in theory, should have a better approach to this game schematically. The thing for me is will someone on the defensive side of the football draw a line in the sand and reset the temperature over there? And when I say reset the temperature, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know it when you see it. I'm talking like swarming to the football. I'm talking about arriving at the football with aggression. I'm talking about playing with a certain sense of intensity. We haven't seen that from Florida State. And that used to be the calling card of these teams the last couple of years. That was who Florida State was the last couple of years. That was why we were so high on them and why they were a team that won the ACC last year, because of just the overall intensity and temperature they had as a team, yes, but you saw it on the defensive side of the football. It would jump off the broadcast at you. Hasn't been there. You got a bye week now. Got a chance to look in the mirror, be like, golly, what are we doing? Losing to Boston College, losing to Georgia Tech. Nothing to take away from them. They played great football in the trenches. Probably both have good seasons, but Florida State, with what they have up front, should not be allowing 200 yards rushing. And I don't want to make it sound like it's as simple as, hey, just have more intensity on the defensive side of the ball, but I think that would go a long way for you based on what we haven't seen on that side of the football to this point. Now, offensively, I don't want to get too in the weeds schematically and say that I know exactly what Florida State should or shouldn't be doing. From the outside looking in, I'd love to see them open it up a little bit more. I thought before the year started, Florida State would be like a 60 to 57% run the football kind of team. Haven't had that kind of success. That's on the offensive line. It's on the running back room. Okay, hey, DJU, we brought you here to manage the game. Quite frankly, is what I thought the move was when he arrived in Tallahassee. I think you might need to ask more of him. Because in spurts now, end of the Georgia Tech game, at different points throughout the Boston College game, I think you've seen some good things from DJU. Now, you've definitely seen your fair share of bad, so I'm not going to bat and saying that he should be up for like the all-ACC team, but I do think that it would be a good move overall to pass to open up the run. Take some pressure off that offensive line in terms of their run blocking, be able to get a better picture to run into. I think at some point in time you got to say, hey, DJU, we brought you here to play quarterback. We need you to play actual quarterback for us here, not just manage the game. We need you to actually push the ball downfield. Some of that's on DJU, some of that's on the play calling, but overall, like, I think you maybe need to be a little bit more aggressive in that department. Because if you can't do it against Memphis, when's it going to happen? If you don't trust your guys on the perimeter to separate, and somebody has to do that now, whoever it is, pick a player, any player, somebody has to separate on the outside for Florida State. If you can't do it against Memphis, is it ever going to happen? Are you ever going to be able to work that in a game ever again? Based on this schedule, it's not impossible, but I wouldn't feel great if you can't do it against Memphis. So now here's the big question for me. Off the bye, kind of what I spoke to with the intensity and the body language, can Mike Norvell kind of go in and adjust this team? Like, you go to the chiropractor and something just feels off, and then you go in, you get a few things clicked here, clicked there, and they tell you to breathe deep, exhale. They push on your chest, and you feel every bone in your back crack, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. It may not be a situation where Florida State looks so much better off the bye, but how much are you able to adjust and get aligned culturally based on the last couple of weeks? I'll tell you this right now, man. I have to believe, taking a wild guess now, those film sessions or those team meetings where Mike Norvell's addressing the team, don't think they were a lot of fun to sit through. I don't think it was all like hey, we got to figure it out. Hey, let's come together. I think it was a lot of probably like, hey, look in the mirror. What are we doing right now? We're 0-2. We're a team supposed to win the ACC. So all that's to say now, I think Florida State, I do think they pull it together. I think the bye week does them well. I think the look in the mirror you would hope does them well. Because if they lose this game, man, I don't know what to tell you. At that point, you'll really be palms up, lost for words for Florida State. I think they go out, play with a lot more pride. I think it is kind of a dogfight now. I think that Memphis is able to get some kind of push up front. I think that DJU has a better day than we've seen. And I think that Florida State gets a little small exhale. I think they win. I'm not going to take them to cover. I don't feel good enough to take them to cover. I'll take them 28-24, defending home turf and getting a win. This is a big one for Florida State now. No other way around. Big one for Florida State. Got to find a way. Find a way Saturday for the folks out there in Tallahassee with a noon kick, too. Noon kick. Got to eat your Wheaties and get up and get after it. So, the Hard Count is brought to you all by our friends at Roback. Roback, too, they've been with us for a while now. There was a point now where this show, The Hard Count, was taking place in a lobby in Waco, Texas. And Roback was rocking with us then. They're rocking with us now. So y'all know how much I love Roback. Wear them all the time for a reason. They have the best active wear on the market. If you need a polo to last you the entire day on a hot game day or maybe even a crisp game day now, moving into football weather, Roback, they're your answer. If you need a hoodie, Roback, also your answer. If you need comfortable shorts, look nice, Roback, you guessed it, they're your answer. Roback just released now their new licensed game day collection. I'll tell you what, it's awesome. With novel polo designs and clean hoodie and quarter zip designs for some of your favorite schools, it's definitely worth checking out. Roback's everyday shorts are the perfect pairing as well. Comfortable, elastic waistband, great fabric that is made to stretch. Roback now also been proudly leading the NIL charge, having signed partnerships with college stars Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers, Caleb Downs, among others. They are becoming the go-to brand for college athletes. So use the code JD, no periods, those two letters, JD, on Roback.com for a generous 20% off for all new customers through the end of this week. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. That's 20% off all performance polos, shorts, Q-zips, and more with code JD. So we appreciate Roback, man. Making sure we're all rocking and rolling for a game day. If you heard nothing else, code JD, 20% off for all new customers, we'll take care of you. Promise you, it's a good way to roll for game day. Now, I told y'all yesterday, just another Another quick note here. The Money Game is now out on Prime Video. It just dropped yesterday. The Money Game is a compelling 6-part docuseries that chronicles the introduction of the groundbreaking decision by the NCAA to grant name, image, and likeness rights to student athletes, permitting them for the first time ever to earn an endorsement compensation while maintaining their amateur athletic status. Now, this docuseries provides an exclusive all-access pass inside LSU athletics, NILSU, as I would call it. The docuseries will examine the impact of NIL rights on college athletics as seen through the eyes of some of the top athletes at LSU. You got Angel Reese in there, you got Livy Dunn in there, you got Jaden Daniels in there. Really, really intriguing. Go ahead and binge this on Prime Video today from executive producer and LSU alum, Shaquille O'Neal. The Money Game is out right now on Prime Video exclusively, so go check that out. Talk about a look behind the scenes, man. To be at LSU, one of the major brands in college athletics, especially college football, if you're Jaden Daniels, winning the Heisman during the NIL era. I mean, that's intriguing stuff. We're back on the air tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, with our final thoughts heading into week 3 of the college football season, man. I'm fired up. College football, y'all, take a second now and recognize this. Week 3, at the end of week 3, we are a quarter of the way through the college football regular season, 25%. It feels wrong. I know. I'm just saying, cherish it now. Squeeze the life out of it. Don't let them tell you that the slate in week 3 isn't as good or this, that, and the other. Like, let's enjoy this now, all right? Again, make sure you're subscribed on your way out. That little button under your picture if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe on podcast. Leave us a review, all that good stuff. Hey, for Nick Brake on the ones and twos producing this thing, for myself, JD Piquel, we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling, and we will see y'all next time.